It's the Week 5 and 6 edition of the Coach's Corner here on Leominster TV and Facebook Live. So happy to have you along with us. That is not Leominster High School head coach Dave Palazzi, who usually occupies that slot. That is Bill Thomas from the K-Zone and Leominster TV broadcast coverage sitting in for Coach this week. Bill, great to have you with us on this edition of the Coach's Corner on Leominster TV.
Oh, this is a treat for me. Thanks for allowing me to join you sitting in for the coach. If I can fill one shoe of his, two shoes that he fills today, I feel like I've done my job.
We'll do our level best. By the way, I like your tailor. Good luck for this week's show.
We shop at the same store.
Indeed we do. Leominster coming off of a tough loss last week, a 42-19 loss to Shrewsbury to run their record in this early season to 0-4. Tough way to start the year, Bill Thomas. The only thing we can say is it was very quick. You went from one play from scrimmage, snapped the ball over the head of the quarterback on play 2, and it didn't go much better after that.
Nah, it was unfortunate the way the game started. Much like the game against St. John's with an 85-yard touchdown return on the opening kickoff. It's hard to play from behind, especially when you've had the struggles that Leominster has had this year. It'd be nice to jump out to an early lead. We were very encouraged the first 2 weeks, even though they were losses, a 2-point loss, a 1-point loss. But the last 2 weeks, the opponents have put up 42, and we've saw a lot of struggles on both sides of the ball by the Leominster Blue Devils.
But realistically, you would imagine that they very easily could have been a 2-2 football team right now. Those two heartbreaking losses in week 1 and 2, look, they loom large at this point in time in the year. Let's take a look at those statistics from that opening week here against Shrewsbury in this week 4 action. You see a 42-19 loss for Leominster. Total yards, Shrewsbury had the slight edge by about 100 yards or so, even without Drew Campanelli for quarters 3 and 4. Passing yards were very close, 129 to 110. Rushing yards, this is the clear domination. You can see Shrewsbury outrushed Leominster by a 284 to 199 mark. First downs, close. It's only 4 more first downs for Shrewsbury to Leominster's 13. They split it in turnovers. That's a situation where obviously you have to imagine if Leominster doesn't snap that ball over the head, they lead in the turnover situation because they created a turnover in that football game with a Felipe Garcia interception, and you can actually see Leominster maintains that time of possession edge by about a minute overall in overall statistics. So as you can see from the statistics, Bill Thomas, it was domination for Shrewsbury. They controlled the game, but it wasn't a complete and total domination.
No, and I think the misleading statistic is the time of possession. That doesn't win football games, and quick strike teams might only have the ball, 40% or even 30% of the time, but they score when they have the ball. And I think that's been Leominster's problem. Drives that have not produced points or have ended in a turnover. It's not that they haven't been able to move the ball, they just haven't been able to produce. And we've seen that time and time again this season, and we saw it again last Friday night.
Another 42-19 loss for Leominster in week 4 of action, as we said, to run their record to 0-4. This is a perfect time to have Bill Thomas in, because here we are, 4 games into an 8-game regular season. It's time for our mid-season report. For those of you in academia, it's progress report time. I gotta have mine in by Wednesday, Bill Thomas. It's time for a little football progress report. Where are we at through the first half of this season? And of course, you and I split things up a little bit to make it a little easier. Let's start with the offense for the Blue Devils. How do you see the Blue Devils offense if we go all the way back to Thanksgiving 2017, a year ago, to where we are through the first 4 weeks of the season?
Well, a small sample size for me, only 5 games. I missed most of the last season last year. But I haven't seen a win, and I'm waiting for that first win. Based on what I've seen, I was encouraged the first couple of weeks, but I haven't seen the progress I would expect, especially with the learning curve that the quarterback has been going through. He's struggled. He's shown his inconsistency, but he's done a great job with the tools and with the schemes that he's been kind of forced into at such a young age. I mean, is 15, 16 years old, and he's competing. A year or two, when it comes to high school, that progression from 9th grade to 12th grade can be really big. And with the experience and everything tossed in, I think his saving grace is he does have some good seniors around him. He's got Adam Couch, he's got Connor Marchand, he's got Zach, help me out?
Del Judas.
Del Judas. We did it phonetically here somewhere, but I just figured I'd let you say it. All seniors and captains and helping to hold the team together, I think, in their own right. But, when you look at the offense specifically, the rushing game has been good. The front five have been doing a great job with run blocking the A and B gaps. The Philbin twins, Kyle and Jack, we talked about them. They moved into the offensive line on the left side, along with Zach Halliday, Joe Conlon over on the right side, centered by Dom Delgado, Tashin Marchand leading the way at fullback. Running game's been pretty productive. But when you're behind, you can't just 3 yards in a cloud of dust and expect to come back on most games, especially when you're 2 or more touchdowns down. I got to give Couch credit. He's been doing the yeoman's of the work, along with Connor Marchand, but he really does the dirty work down close to the goal line. He's got 5 touchdowns, and 3 of them are of 2 or 3 yards each. So, when he needs those tough yards, he gets them for you. But only scoring a couple touchdowns a game, it's not going to cut it offensively.
Not when you're seeing your opponents produce 42 points in the way they are. And we'll talk about how that schedule lined up in a few minutes. But it's great. It's a great point. Ultimately, what I'm hearing from you is kind of matches where I'm looking at from the defense. It's better, and it's particularly better up front, because that's one thing we chronicled all last year, is that Coach Blasey had to adapt his situation offensively to the fact that up front they couldn't plug a hole with a finger in a bucket. I mean, it was a struggle last year to really get some time up front. So to get the Philbin brothers to go in there, join already a experienced line to create that opportunity, it certainly is better up front, which has allowed things to progress at a rate. I would also say, by the way, J.C. Cora, from being a quarterback last year, he was a specialist. He would come in those Wildcat packages.
Right, with Gallagher.
They had to make him throw a little bit so that you could buy that Wildcat would work, because you got to at least show occasionally he could throw. And last year, as I remember it, he was throwing a little bit of a shot put. He didn't have the tight spiral. He didn't have the strength. And, of course, he hadn't hit his growth spurt. If we were to look at his size last year versus where he is today, it's a huge jump from freshman to sophomore year. So I think you're right. The progression that we're going to see over the rest of his career, the ceiling is the sky. There is no limit on that. It's just a question of where do we go right now. And I know he, along with the rest of the team, they want to win. They want to win today. And the community feels that way as well. You just have to be realistic as to how much progression you can expect over a period of time.
Well, we've been spoiled right up and through to the playoffs of 2016. This team was on quite a roll. They were undefeated, I believe, at that point in 2016, but they got bounced out early in those playoffs, and then we saw the struggles last year. And just to continue a little about the offensive struggles, I think the passing game is really where, they've shown the most troubles, especially in obvious passing situations, the growing pains, not having, that go-to receiver, that big kid like Gray or whoever they've had in the past, or Neil O'Connor or somebody, when he wasn't playing quarterback, or, the twins that were, go back a few years ago, the brothers. But it's all about the timing, and I think we've seen this, in obvious passing situations, the timing's just not there. When you only have 2 to 4 seconds to get a snap, make a decision, pick a receiver, and get the ball downfield. When you lose a second worrying about getting the snap, setting yourself, by that time the defense has reacted, and they're just teeing off. And, you only get so much time back there. It's just and I think the D coordinators now are looking at that. In obvious passing situations, they're just going after the quarterback, and, they're just bull rushing back there. And JC is going to learn. He's going to learn from that. He's still got a couple years to go, in his quarterback position. But, the limited experience at wide receiver, there's not that go-to guy that he can just chuck it up. Or, the quick hands, of a running back just out in the flat waiting, knowing where he's supposed to be. I think one bright spot with the offense has been Del Judas. He had his best game of the year against Shrewsbury out of his tight end position. 3 catches for over 75 yards and showing good hands, tough catches. He had a TD. It's nice to see those bright spots.
It's nice to see some growth. On the defensive side of the football, I think we've seen some great growth there. And you can point to the linebacker core, led by Marchand, led by some of the others in there. You've got up front, you've got Calladay, you've got the Philbins. The ability for Kyle Philbin to leak into the backfield on a couple of occasions and make some huge hits over the last couple of weeks against some really dominant offenses, that's really impressive. And something to me that, when you look at it, you go, wow, that's something that's changed. The other thing I think that you see is that on those corners, they have done a great job of forcing everybody to the inside. Teams used to be able to bounce the ball to the outside and really chew up the yards when they're running the football. And they're doing a nice job through the first 4 weeks of the the season of angling them in, keeping that play set on the edge, and force them to the inside, where ultimately the help is. You've got 10 other friends that are on the inside. You've got only the sideline to help you on the outside. If they beat you to that edge, you're in trouble. So I think that's where you're seeing some growth. Like Couch has had a number of hits playing the edge, squaring players up, or forcing them with some initial hits to the inside and letting his friends come help. And that, to me, is the growth that I'm seeing in the aggregate with the defense. So I've got to list the defense as satisfactory, proficient, whatever your almost exemplary is, because they have grown so much from where they were in 2017 to today.
Yeah, I agree. And I think one of the keys, as you pointed out, is Couch. He's doing a great job on the edge. He's turning a lot of plays inside, and he's a great protector out there. And a lot of it, it starts with one person sometimes to kind of set the tone, or the other team starts avoiding, let's say. So now it kind of funnels the other way, and I think it just helps to, to create a flow even on the defensive side. If you can see some success, or you see some avoidance, or they're changing plays, I think that just builds confidence.
Without a doubt. The third phase, of course, of the football games, as my original coach that I would work with would say, offense, defense, special teams, Coach John Dubzinski. Those are your three keys. Let's jump right to special teams. Let's talk about the third phase of the football game, where it's had, especially on place kicking, some opportunities to make some contributions. And then, of course, I know this one just irks Coach Palazzi to no end, because he loves playing field position with the punting game, but he knows if he's had a successful punting game, things aren't going well offensively.
Well, yeah, I mean, we got a great punting game. Well, maybe you're using it too much, but it's all part of it. Field position, ball control, it all goes hand in hand. And when you look at the special teams, you got to start with Pablo Rodriguez, the field goal kicker, the kickoff specialist, and he's been booming some kicks downfield, doing a great job. Sometimes out kicking his coverage. I think on that 85-yarder against St. John's, he just kicked it, 30 yards past any blockers. And by the time they got downfield, the ball carrier had a head of steam and just weaved his way upfield. And sometimes you think, it's a great kickoff, but he kicked it too far. How can you kick it too far? But and he's, I believe he's 6 for 6 on PATs. If they could score some more touchdowns, he'd have a great stat there too. But overall, I'm pretty happy with the special teams. Last week the coach talked about younger players and injuries and having to use those kids on special teams. I think that's where the younger players and the inexperienced players have really stepped up and taken the pressure off those two-way kids. When you know as well as I do, they don't have 60, 65 kids on the roster this year. 40, 42, 44 dressing. Then you got to start expanding the UC roster.
And how can you go about doing that? I think the key, the last phase that I took for this progress report was the intangibles, the thing that you can't actually quantify numerically, and that is, as Gene Hackman said in The Replacement, what do you need to win football games? Heart. Miles and miles of heart. And this Blue Devils team has miles and miles and miles of heart. And I don't know necessarily even that I could have said that about last year's team. They persevered as a group, but I don't know that you felt it overall. Although I look at an 0-4 record, I don't see an 0-4 football team out on the field. I didn't see an 0-3 team last week or so on down the line, when they could have. They very easily could have been in that situation. And I listen to some of the things I hear in the community, and I get disappointed, because while I understand this is not the team that it's been over the last decade, and I understand it's not the one that historically has won 12 Super Bowls, what we have in an intangible is good kids who are doing their darndest to win football games every week, and could very well be a 2-2 team, but for maybe one play here and one play there, or 1 point there and 2 points in another place. To me, that's something you can't teach. A flag here and
which
there,
you have no control over.
To me, that in and of itself, what are you looking to do as a football program? And every coach that I've ever talked to, and every coach in this community that I've ever studied, has said the same thing. We're here to create men. We're here to create good people that can go out and live their lives beyond Leominster High School football. And I think that's what you've got, and you've got it in a large quantity with this group. Be darned the record of 0-4.
Like you said, it's heart. And there are a lot of kids on this team with heart. And, I don't think any kid shows more than Connor Marchand.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's out there on every play. He's a linebacker. He's a running back. He's the punter. He's out there on almost all special teams captains, and he's leading that group. He's stepping up and showing with his actions. I mean, you would think every game is a tie ball game, and it's coming down to the last play. I don't care if they're up by 4 touchdowns or down by 4 touchdowns. You've seen that over the years with players like him, and he is one of those special players that are out there in the middle, involved in everything. We call his name probably as much or more than any player on both sides of the ball in the course of the game.
Let's take a look at the upcoming schedule for the Blue Devils. It's not an easy road to hoe. It hasn't been yet, and it's not getting any easier. You could see the 4 losses. Last one, of course, the 42-19 loss against Shrewsbury we talked about just moments ago. Last road game of the regular season on tap for Week 5 at Doherty Foley Stadium. Note the new start time, a 6:30 kickoff against Doherty on Friday night. That will change our broadcast time periods. We'll have more information on that coming up in a few moments. And then it's the 3 home games to roll out the year. Wachusett, Shepherd Hill, Algonquin. That, of course, on Friday the 12th of October, Saturday the 20th of October. Homecoming, an all-day affair out at Doyle Field. More information on that in the weeks to come, and then close out that 8-week regular season by hosting Algonquin at Doyle Field on what will be senior night on the 26th of October. So lots of things to come here over the next few weeks, and of course opportunities to come back home. And I challenge you, community, come out and support these kids. They certainly deserve it. They have done a lot of great things in this community. They deserve your community support. So we look forward to having you there. We'll supply the coverage to help illustrate things along the way as well. And Bill Thomas, we talk about Week 5, and so we turn our attention to a Doherty team, and you see that Leominster team. And I'm going to take things a little bit out of order here. I want to talk straight up schedules. You've crunched some numbers. I know what those numbers are going to say. Let's talk about the Blue Devil schedule, that schedule we saw just moments ago. What do the numbers say about this team? These are staggering when you look at it.
Well, when you look at Doherty, we talked about the city schedule.
Yes.
And the strength of schedule. Going into this week, not including the 0-4 Blue Devils, their opponents have a collective 4-11 record. And Doherty has played like they've been playing 4-11 teams.
Yep.
They've rolled up the score, 51-6 against Holy Name, who's 0-3, 42-6 against St. Peter Marion, 14-zip win against Tantasco, who's 2-2, gave them trouble in a common opponent here, Wachusett, who we'll see later. They beat 14-7 to open the season. So they're not all patsies. We talk about the early season schedule and stuff. When you're playing the city schedule, sometimes, the talent gets spread kind of thin. And Doherty's showing it. They've outscored their opponents collectively 121-19.
Through 4 weeks.
Through 4 weeks. So, and they appear to be doing it on the ground.
Yes.
When you're looking at it.
Which is a huge departure.
Let's not discount, their 4-0 record. Mm-hmm. But sometimes when you look at strength of schedule, and when you look at the other side of what Leominster, just quickly to compare strength of schedules, their 4 opponents, the first 4 weeks, not counting Doherty's 4-0, 13-3. Now let's toss in Doherty. Their first 4 weeks, or 5 weeks opponents, 17-3. I mean, that is a tough schedule, and the coach repeatedly says, we play the toughest schedule in Central Mass. He's not just trying to make excuses for his team. He means it, but he does it for a reason, and you know as well as I do.
Yes.
You got to get the competition. You want your kids to play up to competition, and that's the only way you get better.
So what we're talking about is 2 teams that are in the same division, Division 3, Central Mass, okay? And yet one team's combined opponent record at this point through 4 weeks, entering the 5th, one of them 4-11, the other 17-3.
Well, it'll be 13-3,
Yes,
but
correct.
let's toss in Doherty's 4-0.
Make it 17-3.
We can make it even sound worse either way.
Or whatever it is, and 17-3.
Can we move to the Worcester? Can we get a city schedule?
I was going to say, same division doesn't sound like it. And that, I believe, only underscores my concern here. But, I mean, from a total broadcast standpoint, perfect. Sounds like a great time to play a team and maybe give them a run when also possibly, I mean, let's see, what exciting opponent do they have the week after?
Worcester South, who's 0-4. You notice I stretched this out for the season.
Yeah.
So collectively going forward after Leominster, their prospective opponents at this point in the season are 6-10. So it doesn't get any harder for them. They're 2-2 is the toughest team on their schedule.
And North Middlesex
through the first 4 weeks.
And Burncoat, those last 2 weeks, weeks 7 and 8, probably the 2 best teams they'll see after Leominster. And they'll have only played 2 teams in their playoff division through the conclusion of the 8-week regular season.
And none of them
Something about
500.
that is concerning to me.
I mean, it's just, you look at the imbalance, but they get just as much credit for winning.
Same number of points.
Same number of points. You don't get a strength of schedule bonus unless you're playing up to either
D1
or 2.
Yep.
And then you get, is it 12? You get 10 within, 8 if you play down.
You don't even get 8 anymore.
Whatever
you get
it is.
10 for
10,
a
no
win against your division or anybody below you.
Oh, anybody below, so they've kind of...
That's concerning to me.
Because that just encourages teams that are playoff hounds.
Yes.
Just not to seek out the strongest opponents.
And what they've done is also discourage rivalry matchups like games against Everett and Xaverian and Brockton. Those games are off the schedule now very simply because there's no mathematical reason to do it.
Right.
There's none. There's no mathematical reason to do it.
It hurts Central Mass teams when
without a question.
when they take a licking, because they're trying to get better, but they don't get any credit for it.
And
They
those
should get
teams
some credit.
Don't want to come out here. There's no bonus or
no
benefit
bonus.
to them.
Yeah.
They want to stay in their area and increase their strength of schedule. So that's the concern. That's what this format is doing to football here in Massachusetts. That, to me, massive concern. Bill Thomas, we are going to split our time here a little bit. We are going to talk a little bit about the broadcast information coming up for Leominster and Doherty this week. So a couple of changes here. The K-Zone, due to playoff implications with the Boston Red Sox opening up their playoffs on Friday night, we'll have a live stream on WPKZ.net. Live pre-halftime and post shows on Facebook Live beginning at 6 o'clock. So tune in for those over on the K-Zone's Facebook page. Meanwhile, our friends at Leominster TV will be leading the coverage. Verizon and Comcast, you see your channels there. Of course, the replays on YouTube throughout the week and weekend, and also at Leominster.tv. Play-by-play on Facebook Live for Leominster TV begins at 6:30 on Friday night. Again, note that early change for this Week 5 action. 20 games for 20 years coming up, of course, this week on Leominster TV beginning tomorrow night on October the 2nd. It's Leominster and Neshoba from 2007. Then to 2006 for Thursday, that's October the 4th, Leominster and Algonquin. Both those games were at Doyle Field. 6:30 are premieres for 20 games for 20 years. And so that's what is coming up on the broadcast side for Week 5 or through Week 5. We'll get to Week 6 in a moment. But straddling Week 5 and 6, you're looking at a Doherty team and you're looking at a Wachusett team. Two very different offenses, two very different styles they go about playing. Well, before I let Coach Palazzi leave last week, I brought out the old whiteboard and the marker, and he showed us this. Time for another edition of Chalk Talk with Leominster High School head coach Dave Palazzi. And Coach, we talk about the season kind of having runs, and obviously the benefit of playing a St. John's, then a Shrewsbury, then a Doherty. All similar teams, all want to pass the ball, all want to go vertical down the field. Then you end up in weeks after a 3-week run of that, where you then get Wachusett. Not exactly the same thing. So on the defensive side, I'll force you to your other hat. On the defensive side, how do you change from week to week? You're going from defending a team who wants to go down the field to a team that's going to want to pack it in and come right at you.
Yeah, I mean, you have two different teams. I mean, Doherty, obviously, they run spread like us. They're gonna get their guys, try to spread us out. They'll even go 5 wide at times, where they'll have their receivers. They'll go quads, we call that, with just the quarterback and the tailback. And then it's forcing us to get outside the box. So we play a 3-4 defense. So, we get our end tackle, our backers in here, and then we'll put our backers out here with our safeties and our corners. So, it'll be something like that. And then they motion over, and you have your different calls that you're going to do. But, they are in shotgun, so you really kind of have to defend them vertically, laterally, and right at you. So that, obviously, it's going to put some pressure on, make him an end and an end, or tackles, but it'll put some pressure on our tackles and our backers. And these backers now, they have to become run defenders and pass defenders, against the speed sweeps and things like that, and motion over. So that would be Doherty. They're a great team. They're kind of
making this adjustment.
So this is our defensive coaches. I mean, they'll go into the game plan. They'll break down all the film. What do they run on different formations? What are the screens? We'll break up in each individual. The linemen will go with the line. The backers will go, and the safeties, and we'll work on the different pass routes and how we're going to defend. Trips routes that they have. This guy does a circle seam. He does here, and he's out. What are the coverages going to be? Is a corner going to sit in the flat? So it's more or less, defending the pass and the run. It's basically everything. When you get a team like Wachusett, it's less pass and more power football. I mean, they can go, they're, like that, on 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, There we go. We got 11. So
That's the Statue of Liberty over there. He's never going to see the ball all night long.
Well, they actually do some, they'll do some gun and things like that. But you get our defense aligned here, and you get our backer here, and now it's a different ball game. Now you got to bring your safeties down in here, and your corner up wherever his alignment may be, in particular deep, and they're just going to crisscross applesauce, I call it.
Yes,
They're gonna go this
absolutely.
way, that way, and it's kind of a power wing type of a team. They'll shift this guy. He'll come in and he'll bump out. Now, from a defensive perspective, when these linebackers line up, in this case, they got a tight end and a back, strong left. So that will tell the players where to align and what their assignments do. Now, Wachusett does this sneaky little trick. They'll bump him out, and they'll bring him in here now. Now it becomes a strong right call in the middle of, and then, they'll do their old little waggle play, and he'll come waggling out. And now this weak side backer is now the strong side, and vice versa. And then you got to stop the inside traps. So it's not as easy as it all looks. Why don't you just line up in, a 4-3 or 3-4 and blitz people? I mean, it's not as easy as it sounds, because teams, you got to remember, offensive guys, I'm an offensive guy, they're watching what we're doing with specific formations. The linemen are watching the D-line and so on and so forth. They'll report back to the coach, run the ISO to the slot side. They're slanting, they're cheating, and that's really what Wachusett and all these great running teams do. They'll watch our alignments, and then they'll start feeding a play, and then we'll make an adjustment, we'll stop it, and then they'll go to plan B. So, it's kind of a game of chess out there, but, all the while this is taking place, you need your kids to make the plays physically. But, the biggest difference between this and this are the safeties and the corners, because now it's a different part of run support, and they got to watch this guy going vertical. If he's peeking into the backfield,
Starting to cheat up.
can run right by you. Yeah, and that's happened. Neshoba does this, and it's a tough gig. You gotta mix it up in there with the big boys when you're running around with all the the skinny kids. I call it. All the receivers running around, and then you're in here with the linemen. It changes it up.
What's the tip-off in here? I mean, when they're seeing some of this movement that you're talking about, what's the tip-off that they're looking for? Is there something they can key on to know where the changes are?
I mean, depending on what we'll look at the film. We may look at which way the fullback goes for these backers. We may read guards. These linebackers reading the guards. They go, you go. These guys may read the tight end. They may read the tackle. If the tackle's head pops back, you get back in the pass. If he, comes down, you read run. You fill the lane. It's just a number of keys that we go through. Everybody's different. Sometimes we'll read the guards. Sometimes we won't. I know a lot of teams with us, as soon as we pull the guard, they send this backside A gap all the time. I mean, because we do a lot of pulling, so that's just something you got to be ready for. But depending on the team, who we're going to key and what we're going to key, it really comes down to the film and who their best players are and what their best plays are.
The film was the thing that I'm hearing in here, and it's one day. Mondays are film day. After that, it's practice the rest of the week until you get to obviously walk through on Thursday, game on Friday on a typical week. Whereas your counterparts in college and the NFL, this film every day as a team. In this case, you're relying a lot on high school kids. In between all the other things they're responsible for academically, need to be able to watch some film as well.
Right, and we watch the film together, but the kids, they watch it at home. But our coaches will break down the film all weekend, and we'll have cards in practice. Like, this is the formation. These are the plays that they run out of this formation. We'll hold up the cards, and these guys will make different calls about who's what and what we need to look out for. So we'll have different calls that we'll make for different plays that we see coming. So that's really how it goes each and every week.
That's Kate's favorite buzzword, the cards. Ernie Adams from the Patriots. We got these cards that we draw everything up on.
That's a true story.
So vitally important. That's this week's Chalk Talk. What a week of action and how quickly our time does fly. Week 5, it's Leominster and Doherty from Foley Stadium. Week 6, Wachusett comes to Leominster. All those broadcast on the K-Zone and Leominster TV. You can join us for all of that. I want to thank Bill Thomas for sitting in for Coach Palazzi. We've got time for another to come in the weeks to come. We're a little pink with your blue in Week 6 of action. For Bill Thomas, Kate Robbins back in our control room, I am Todd Robbins, saying thank you so very much for joining us, and until next week, So long, everybody.